104.5 The Team. We are joined by Casey Stern from MLB Radio Network. He also does a whole lot with the NBA. But let's start with baseball. Casey, we do a segment, we call it Real or Mirage. And like if the Yankees are really this good, we'd say real. If you think they're going to fall off, we'd say Mirage. Where do you rank this Yankee team?
Oh, boy. They're like a Mirage real-ish team. They're kind of in the middle. I think they're not this good if you're talking about sitting there and having Pineda be a brilliant pitcher and, winning 10 out of every 14 games this season. No. Do I think that they're a better than 500 team this year? I do. So it depends what the expectations are. I think the real question with the Yankees is clearly the starting rotation. So far, seen really good signs out of Pineda, who I don't trust still, and out of Severino, who, looks certainly more prepared to be in the rotation this year than last year. Montgomery's done nice things. Sabathia has stepped up. Tanaka's been good since the first outing. So, if the rotation continues to surprise, I think they'll be a factor until July, but that's where this season will hinge. For the Yankees, they're a team that hasn't been thinking about this year at all whatsoever. They're trying to grow into this super team once they, get their kids ready and get all the money off their books. If they're in July and they're in a spot like they are now where they would be in a playoff position, I don't think Brian Cashman is going to necessarily abort ship and all of a sudden go and trade all of his prospects for one player, but I do think he would dip into the system a little bit if he can get a controllable starting pitcher who they'd have for the next 3 years. The example I would give is John Daniels with the Rangers when Cole Hamels was out in the market. Nobody thought the Rangers would get him. They gave up a lot to go get him, but they had him for not only the rest of that year, but 3 additional years. I think if the Yankees could make a deal like that in July, they would, but they would have to be as in it as they are now to go that direction. Otherwise, they're going to try and get rid of Headley's last year. They're going to try and get rid of a rental the rest of the season in Holiday. They're going to try and get somebody to take CC for half a year. It really depends to me. Everything about this season depends on what their record is in the middle of July.
So basically you're telling me, Casey, that my drawing analogies to the 1996 teams make me look like a drunk.
If you think this is 1996, yes.
Okay, all right, good.
If you think the core is building, I mean, look, it depends. I mean, look, with no offense to Greg Bird, I don't think that they have guys right now that are in necessarily the quality of Derek Jeter from a position player standpoint. I don't see Andy Pettit. I don't see Mariano Rivera clearly. So, I don't know necessarily, to be honest with you, the biggest comp for the 96 Yankees is playing down in Houston, not in New York. But I do think this is a team that is going to spend $500 million in one of these off seasons at some point moving forward. And I do think that at minimum, Harper or Machado, if not both, will end up on this team. So the championships are coming. The Yankees back in the World Series is coming. I just don't think it's coming this year.
Casey Stern of MLB Network Radios with us right now on 104.5 The Team.
Casey, we go from one New York team to the other. We saw last night Yoenis Cespedes pull up and running to second base. I know he's going to get an MRI today. Where are we at with Cespedes, and how is this going to affect this Mets team?
Well, it looks like he'll be out for at least, it seems like, the weekend. So, that's going to affect them because really when you look at their games against the Nationals, going back when they were successful 2 years ago, Drew Storen is still having bad dreams about him now with the third team since then. Cespedes was the biggest reason I thought they won those 6 games down the stretch, which clinched their season. So, he's been big in that series. Their offense really outside of Jay Bruce has not been clicking. I'm not surprised by that. I did not think that this would be a good offensive team. I did think they'd be feast or famine. They're exactly as I thought because you're going to be more likely to see a rally monkey than a rally from the Mets offense. So I think that it's an issue to not have Cespedes for this weekend. But beyond that, I don't think it's going to be that much of a problem. The biggest thing with a hamstring in a situation like this is that you want to make sure that the guy is 100%, because if you rush him back and all of a sudden it turns into, an additional strain or a tear, then all of a sudden you go from a week to a situation where you're at a month. So I think they'll be careful. I don't expect to see him whatsoever this weekend either way. So the immediate impact is your first series of the season against the Nationals, you're not going to have your best player.
They add Familia back last night to their bullpen. What can he do to kind of give these starters a little bit more confidence knowing they don't have to go 7 or 8 innings every time out?
Well, honestly, I think the best thing he could do is put everybody back in their right position. This is not a great bullpen, even with Familia. It definitely is not without him. So, to have Addison Reed, who, did a decent job, saved 4 games, put him back in the 8th inning, stop having to rely on Hansel Robles like he's the second coming of going back to 96, Rivera when he was sitting up Wetland, because he's not. To not have to overuse some of the guys that they have in the 6th and 7th inning, like Salas, for example, who we saw used in a spot he probably shouldn't have been about a week ago, and they lost the game. So, I think really, to me, it puts kind of everybody in the right seat on the bus more than anything else. At the end of the day, Familia was there last year. He was there the year before that, where we saw him blow 3 saves in a World Series. So it's a constant. It's not anything new. To me, now they're back kind of where they were, and it still comes down to whether or not Syndergaard and DeGrom and Harvey, because Matz I don't trust and never did, and I still don't. I don't know at the back end what you're getting. I said before the season, and will still say this team should have paid Bartolo Colon $12 million to come back. Worst comes to worst, he's in your bullpen half the year. They already miss him, in my opinion, because Gesellman and Lugo, the luster is off all of that from last year. So, I think the front 3 in the rotation, to me, are still the biggest, most important factor of this team. But I don't think this is a great bullpen. To me, Familia just kind of puts them back in the spots they were the last couple of years.
Casey Stern with us right now on 104.5 The Team. Casey, I know Starling Marte just gets the 80-game pop. We got guys like Eric Thames who's, just absolutely smacking the cover off the ball. I've actually had Red Sox fans, because I'm the loudest Yankee fan in the area, accuse Chase Headley of cheating. Is it fair that we look at these guys through steroid or PED glasses nowadays?
No, it's not, because you've had 2 guys get caught last year and 1 so far this year. And I heard the same things about Jose Bautista, who never did anything as a Pirate, never played every day, then started putting up 50 home run seasons. Everybody claimed he's on steroids. Guess what? Nobody apologized to him. None of the media members who sat there and whined and moaned about it. None of the fans who called into talk radio. No one's apologized to the guy. Now, I'm not a huge Bautista fan necessarily, but he deserves probably about 17 million apologies from people who thought he was on steroids, because he hasn't been. He's been tested a million times, and it wasn't steroids. He figured it out. J.D. Martinez was the guy the Astros dumped on the side of the road. He changed one thing in his stance. Look what happened. Justin Turner is the guy the Mets dumped on the side of the road. He goes and spends 2 weeks with Marlon Byrd's hitting instructor, and boom, look what happened. So I just think, to me, with no disrespect, I think that's just people who don't know anything about baseball and really don't have anything else to talk about, because this happens all the time. Ryan Vogelsong went to Japan, he couldn't get a job here, came back and all of a sudden was winning huge games in the World Series. This happens in baseball legitimately every year all the time. So, Thames went 3 years in a row hitting 40 home runs in Japan before he got here. So, if people think he's on steroids or PEDs, he's been using them 4 years deep, and I'm pretty sure that the Brewers would have done due diligence to make sure that there were tests and those things weren't occurring the last few years. So I don't think it's fair. I'm not surprised, because people don't have anything else to talk about, but I don't think it's fair, no.
Okay, so you made Levack feel a little bit better about Chase Headley there. Let's go. But switching from baseball to the NBA playoffs now, the breaking news of today, obviously, is the Bulls.
Pun intended.
Go breaking, exactly. Is Rajon Rondo with his fractured thumb out indefinitely. Does this make this a series now again with the Celtics and the Bulls?
Well, it should have been a series anyway, because the Celtics are a way better team than Boston is. I think people have kind of forgotten. This is the weirdest sports world I've seen in the last. Everything has gone to there's more of what have we done for me lately. People complaining. I saw WEEI did an article about Brad Stevens being in jeopardy. You know how many teams would literally kill people if they had to go get Brad Stevens to coach their team? This team wasn't supposed to be in the top half of the Eastern Conference, and they're the 1 seed. The best player on either team, clearly without even close question, is Isaiah Thomas. The guy's sister died, the day before Game 1, which, by the way, I couldn't believe how well he played or what went on, but he didn't look good in Game 2, and they go as far as this guy goes. So, to me, this series, look, does it make it easier because Rondo's not on the floor? Sure, because the Bulls' offense when Rondo's not on the floor is atrocious. So, yes, that will help. But even with Rondo on the floor, this has nothing to do with Rondo or the Bulls. If Isaiah Thomas plays like he did during the season, the Celtics can beat this team 4 games in a row.
Casey Stern, of course, you can catch him on MLB Network Radio, and also, of course, covering the NBA for Turner Sports Among. Guys everywhere. Put in perspective how great of a performance LeBron James was last night.
Look, this is a guy who I think a great example of us not laying. I'm thinking of Bryce Harper and people now who want to come up with reasons he's not going to be what it seems like he is again. I remember when LeBron against the Mavs in the finals in 2011. He doesn't want to take the shot, and he's not that good. The guy's going to go to his seventh consecutive. Think about that, seventh consecutive finals. He took Nick rejects to get there one year, and Smith and Shumpert. Nothing should surprise us about LeBron James. One of the best 5 players to ever step on a court, if not higher on that list than that. And look, he's a pain in the neck sometimes. I think he whines too much sometimes. I'm not a huge fan of everything that he does necessarily, but you think back to the Pistons game in the playoffs, guys, a few years ago where he scored in the fourth and in overtime 25 straight points. This is what you saw again last night. This is the best player in the world. If the MVP was given to the best player, he would literally have won the MVP every single year of his career. He is the best player in this sport. And I think when he plays like that, especially when he steps up on the defensive end, he can make more of an impact than anybody else in the game, including Russell, who I love, who will be and should be the MVP this year. But the one thing that LeBron has not done at all this year, which you saw some intensity from him last night, is he really has not defended at all. I don't know if it's been because he's been tired or annoyed or bored or what. But to me, you think about, the block on Iguodala, the defense of LeBron James is where he separated himself from me over the course of his career. So really on both sides of the ball, he was the Kawhi-level two-way player that you want to see from LeBron every night in the second half, and I thought he was brilliant yesterday.
Casey, we haven't had a chance to talk to you. Just before we let you go, any chance that it's not Cavs Warriors in the finals?
Yay. I think I would say slight. I would say slight chance. I don't think there's any chance in the West that it's not the Warriors. Any chance. I don't think, because I love Kawhi. I think he's the best two-way player in the game. But the Spurs are way too old and slow that even if they were up 2-1 in that series, they would lose because the Warriors will wear them out by Game 4. By the time you get to the fourth quarter and you see an NFL team just kind of passing out on defense, that would be the Spurs. They may win the first 2 games of that series. They'd lose the next 4. They'd just get wiped out. They're too old. As far as the Rockets, that'll be 130 to 128 in that series. So I don't think there's any chance anybody beats the Dubs. The Cavs, very slight. If the John Wall and the Wizards that we're seeing now, they could really take the Cavs, I think, into deep water. The best game of this season, I think, unquestioned, was the game in overtime in D.C. where LeBron hit that shot, that ridiculous shot from the corner. The Wizards beat them another time this season. John Wall is playing out of his mind. I think he's been, outside of the performance single-handedly last night from LeBron, overall the best player by far in this first round has been John Wall. I think the Wizards can really take the Cavs to at least a 6th game in the series. And if you look at Cleveland, the way they've played this year, they've been vulnerable when they start to kind of get into that negativity and getting on each other. They haven't been tested that way with Indiana. If Indiana makes that shot, if C.J. Miles hits that shot in Game 1, all of a sudden I think it's a different story. I wouldn't be shocked if you ended up seeing a 6 or even a 7 in a series against D.C.
I mean, I could talk to you all day, but I know you got your own stuff to do. Casey Stern, we appreciate you, brother.
Guys, always a pleasure, man. Anytime. You know that.